You know, it seems like a lot of veterans are running for public office these days. If you're considering a run for office, I suggest you get a campaign coach. Well, Raz Shafer can help you run for public office. Raz is the founder of My Campaign Coach, and find out why he prefers to work with military veterans. It's coming up next on Veteran on the Move.
Welcome to Veteran on the Move. If you're a veteran in transition, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone still stuck in that JOB trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. And now, your host, Joe Crane.
All right, Raz Shafer from mycampaigncoach.com, also a fellow podcaster from the How to Run for Office podcast. Thanks for being here today. Raz, take us back. Give us a brief history on your background and how you arrived in the political arena, and ultimately how you are sort of specialized in helping veterans run for office.
Well, Joe, thanks for having me on the podcast today. It's a lot of fun. You host my own podcast, but I love getting to talk to new audiences, especially to veterans and folks interested in identifying a second service opportunity. For me, I never had a chance. My parents were politically active. My dad was a doctor in a small town here in Texas, and my mom homeschooled my two brothers and I. And so they had a friend back in 96, and I was 10 years old, that was running for state rep. And I love this lady to this day. She's incredible. And so at 10 years old, I was a super cute little kid, and something happened about 12. But for the moment, I was a pretty cute little kid. And so we were walking around our neighborhood, handing out flyers and talking to our neighbors about why they needed to vote for Becky Farrer for State House. And when it came around to election day, we lost by 12 votes on a recount. And
wow.
I was devastated. I don't remember, but my dad says he came in my room that night after we had the recount and found out she did lose, and there was only 12 votes. And he found me crying in my room as this little 10-year-old. And he said, "Raz, what's wrong?" And I said, "Well, Dad, we lost, and that stinks." And he told me, "Raz, working in politics, as in life, you're not going to win every battle that you step up for. That's just not going to happen." And I was like, "Dad, I know, but we didn't do everything we could. There were people we knew who didn't vote for Becky, and I know there's at least 13 of them." And so my takeaway from that was that I knew that even as a 10-year-old, I had not given it everything I had, and I knew the fight mattered, and I knew that we could have won if I would have just pulled my weight, even as a 10-year-old. And so, we each have those moments in our lives that kind of crystallize our resolve and are kind of those demons that stick with us. And so, 20 years later, 21 years later, every election cycle, when there's this short period of time, it can only be 10 to 15 minutes between when the polls close and the election results start coming in. And I just kind of have this ritual where I've busted my butt through the whole election cycle. I've come home sweaty and sunburned on election day, and I just go in the bathroom and wash my face and look in the mirror and I ask myself, did I do everything I could? And I always like it when the answer is yes. And so that's one of those things that really crystallized my resolve and got me sucked into politics. And from that point on, I was hooked. I mean, I knew I wanted to study politics and economics. So I went to Hillsdale College up in Southern Michigan and studied it there. I came out. I was blessed with the opportunity to get really what was my dream job that I didn't even know existed, helping train candidates and activists. And I got to spend the next 3.5 years training in 18 different states and over 5,000 candidates and activists. And, God kept opening really cool doors. I got to work for Senator Cruz and do presidential campaign stuff and Senate and start my own business. And now I'm back to primarily doing campaign coaching, helping identify and train and equip quality candidates.
Now, as you're within your business of coaching people and how to run campaigns, do you ever land a big gig from time to time and basically drop what you're doing and go all in with a particular candidate, or are you mostly in the training and advising somebody how to put a campaign together, and you're basically staying at arm's length?
So I do some of both. When Senator Cruz was running for president, I put aside a significant amount of what I was doing. I didn't drop everything. As a business owner, you got to keep those other lines in the water. And part of why I like you creating courses and the type of content that we have through the podcast and others through our website, what I love about that is that I can still be helping campaigns even when my time is not necessarily devoted, moment to moment to that. I'm not trading time for money or time for helping campaigns in all those cases. And there's a lot that I can help campaigns with just through my website and them going and taking free courses there or reading our stuff or listening to our podcast. So even at times when I go and I'm on a big project like doing the super PAC work I did for Senator Cruz, I'm able to still be helping a lot of people. And part of the reason we structure it this way is really candidate training and candidate prep have been a constant problem both on the left and the right. So if you are thinking about running for office, you get a lot of several different nonprofits and resources out there that'll give you courses, or you can fly out somewhere and take a couple day course on how to run for office. And they're very helpful. But the problem is because they're a C3 nonprofit, they're nonpartisan. So the moment you decide, yes, I'm running, they can't talk to you anymore. So this group that's helped you get started and help catalyze your run now says it's illegal for us to talk anymore. And from that point on, there's this no man's land between where you're at and saying, okay, I do want to run for office, or I think I do, until you have enough money in the bank to hire a consultant to help you actually run the race. And that could be days to years in the interim. But we haven't had anything in that time. And so there's a lot of people who would like to run that don't end up running because they don't have anybody to help them. They feel like they're alone. And so through campaign coaching, kind of inventing this new category, our goal is to help make sure that we're able to have more men and women that would be good if we could snap our fingers and put them in office, who know that they have somebody to walk with them and fight alongside them to get them ready to actually file and become a candidate on the ballot.
Well, that's great. Now, although you didn't start out necessarily specializing in helping veterans run for office, you've actually have helped quite a few veterans run for office, and you're actually focusing on that quite a bit now, aren't you?
Yeah. So for me, one of the questions is I'm always like having, being effective and efficient with my time. And so I think about, okay, what's a community where I can go and find and identify a larger than average number of qualified, effective candidates. And so a few of the things I look for is I want somebody who knows what leadership looks like. And so whether you're an E1 or higher up in the officer ranks, you understand, you've seen examples of good and bad leadership. And I would imagine that they're a lot more stark as far as identifying the traits and studying leadership just from your day-to-day life in the military. You see a lot of those good and bad leaders. And so understanding what leadership looks like is the first step to actually becoming a good leader yourself. So even if you're not somebody that's been in the officer ranks, you're just somebody you've spent a lot of time actually doing the hard work in the military, being in the enlisted ranks, you understand what leadership looks like, and you've learned a lot about that. So that's a key thing for me, because we have too many people that run for office that don't understand that they can get elected because they have the money or the name ID, but they don't have the leadership abilities that are going to actually make you effective and to be a good elected representative. And from there, I want to see somebody that's loyal, that understands the value of being honest, that's willing to fight and sacrifice for principle. And so, it doesn't take long thinking about what's a community I can go to that's going to have those in spades and say, well, military and combat veterans are those people. And so, I started looking and saying, I want to be investing in this community because, for one thing, I can find a lot of great people there that would make good candidates. But for me, serving the military has been a lifelong passion of mine. I did not end up joining myself. I felt like God was kind of pulling me a different path, but I've always been, I've been one of those guys that when you look at my bookshelf, it's military history dating back, thousands of years. And, if there's a book by, a guy in the Marine Corps or the Navy SEALs, I probably got it on my bookshelf. And so I love learning there, and I have a real passion for serving those who have served me and our country. And so, as I know, a lot of veterans have this desire for a second service. They're looking for that as a transition. And I feel like more and more of them, I would like to see them looking to running for office because there's a huge need there. We got tens of thousands of offices from dog catcher and school board to president that are up for election every 2 or 4 years. And we need more good women stepping up for that.
Yes. So you see them on the news a lot of veterans running for office and stuff, and some of them get in and are successful at it. But I've noticed it seems like a lot of really good folks, good veteran types get in there, and they just get eaten up by the professional politicians. I mean, they had no idea what they were getting into, and they lose elections all the time. They don't get elected, or they get in briefly and they just get chewed up by the political process because they really had no idea what they were getting into. Do you help potential candidates with that, with those problems, or raise awareness of what the process is really like?
Yeah, one of the things that I look for, the typical person that comes and I work with, there's somebody that has got some leadership experience. They have a definite passion for serving their community, in state, federal, local office, and so they want to do something, and they believe that if they could snap their fingers and they were all of a sudden on the floor of the U.S. House casting votes and helping determine policy, that they'd be good at it. And the truth is, there's a lot of people that meet that criteria. But there's this thing called an election between here and there that you got to win in order to actually have that card and cast those votes. And so we try to take a lot of the mystery out of that. It turns out that elections, while they're difficult, are far from impossible. Just a handful of bits of knowledge can do a lot for increasing your ability to run and win. And so we try to help you. You start by asking the question to find out if you're prepared to run, and then helping take you through the steps to say, okay, you're prepared or you're not. Here's what you need to work to get yourself ready. And here are the systems and processes you need to build to run an effective campaign. And once they're in office, there's a whole lot of things they got to be ready for, right? Everything from that, hey, how do I hire staff? Because I've got about a month to staff my office between winning this election and being ready to rock and roll. So how do I do that? What are the things I need to, the traps I have to be looking out for? And so, we've got not only good people that are experienced veterans that are in politics and doing a great job we can put them in touch with, but we've learned a lot of these lessons because, honestly, they're not just veterans problems or problems that veterans have when they run for office. They're problems that a lot of people have just when they're normal citizens that are working a job, that are owning a business, and that want to go change things. And so we really work hard to try to prepare them both not just for the campaign, but for what it's going to be like once they take office.
Now, when you're dealing with civilian types that are looking to run for office and veterans that are looking to run for office, do you find a distinctive difference as to the reasons that both types are choosing to run?
There are definitely some similarities, but I think there's some pretty cool differences as well. One, we're talking about people who already have spent significant amounts of time, whether it's a single tour or a whole career. They've spent invested in protecting and serving the United States of America and their cities and states and country. And so we're talking about not just their first real public service opportunity, but at least a second one. In some cases like yourself, it's gone in and out and in and out. It's you can start adding numbers to that. But for these folks, I got two in mind. One's a guy named Tony Tinderholt, who's a state rep here in Texas, combat veteran, served in Iraq, and another one, Senator Brian Birdwell here in Texas. He was the closest survivor to the point of impact of the Pentagon on September 11th. And both of these guys are absolute rock stars, conservative guys that have incredible military stories, as well as being rock star legislators. And for both these guys, when you sit down and you start asking them why do they want to serve there, it's all tied back to the same passion that's been driving their service for decades, for most of, if not all of their life. And so you have this thread that's consistent throughout their life, and that's a love of their country and a desire to serve it and willingness to sacrifice for it. And part of why that's important to me personally is that I want to see consistency. That for me, even if you're on the left, even if I disagree with you a lot, I still want to see more liberals running for office that actually have principles that they believe in. And even being a conservative and a Republican, there are plenty of people that run on the Republican side of the ticket that I don't believe exemplify true principled nature and are fighting for the right reasons. So for me, anytime I can see those type of lifelong or career-long traits of a love of service, of standing for principled ideals, that's huge for me. And veterans, when you're coming out of the military and going into that second service, you've got that in spades.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Raz, hold that thought for just a second. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Have you joined the Veteran on the Move Facebook group? I personally invite every guest that I have on the podcast to join the group. So the Veteran on the Move Facebook group is a great way to connect with previous podcast guests. Our Facebook group will keep you in touch with other veterans that are transitioning to entrepreneurship, and you will also get great updates and free guides on the people, programs, and resources that will help you in your transition to entrepreneurship. All right, we're back talking with Raz Shafer from mycampaigncoach.com and how to run for office. And Raz, before the break, you were talking about working with potential candidates and morals and principles and their reasons for running and what their beliefs and values. When you first when somebody comes to you and you first start working with them, you run them through a test or a series of questions to find out if they're actually ready for office. What kind of questions are you asking, and how do you determine if somebody's actually ready to even run for office?
So this is actually something that we get asked a lot, and we created a free 1-hour course with about 40 questions at the mycampaigncoach.com. And it's a free course anybody can sign up for. It's called Should I Run for Office? And the idea is that we want to help them understand if they should run and if they can win. And so, in cooperation with some consultants that I've worked with and through a lot of my research, we've built this list of questions, and it encompasses everything from looking at the personal stuff, like looking at your strong and weak character traits, some of your personal analysis, to looking at your family, how it's going to affect your family, how you want them involved in your campaign, what it might do to your marriage, your finances, what kind of values you want to fight for, your fundraising side, research structure, et cetera. And I think, all those questions basically come down to 3 that you have to answer over and over on the campaign trail. We call those your 3 whys. So why me, why now, and why this office? Those are the 3 questions that every time you open your mouth as a candidate, you're answering, whether that's the question you were asked or not. That's what your voters, donors, volunteers, the media are listening for. And so, we really try to not just ask the typical questions that any consultant is going to ask you, but we dive into things like, is your spouse on board? And it's easy to ask that question but here's the fact. If I was running for office and you asked my wife, hey, are you supporting your husband? Of course she'd say yes. She's awesome, beautiful, incredible wife. And so she's going to say, yes, of course I'm supporting my husband. But we kind of walk them through. He's like, look, did you make it easy for your spouse to say no? Did you actually articulate to them what this is going to be like? Do you understand so that you can articulate what's going to be like? Because I won't work with somebody whose spouse is not truly on board and backing them 100%. And that can look like a lot of different things. Just 2 spouses or a half dozen spouses can be 100% behind their husband or wife, and their involvement in the campaign can be very different. But we want to make sure that we're not destroying marriages there. And so, we try to help them make sure that they understand what it looks like to have a spouse that's on board and how to make it easy for them to say no. Because if they're going to say no, we'd like them to say no at the beginning of the campaign, not when you're 3 months out from election day. We start breaking down and looking at the budget side, like if you're prepared financially, you'll start doing some vulnerability assessments to say, where are you going to be attacked? Where could you be attacked? And how can we help prepare for that? And then going to start helping them build some basic systems and processes, like one of your previous guests, Scott Beebe. Scott's somebody that I did a lot of business consulting with and had coaching with him. And I'm in a mastermind group with him every single week. And so he drills into my head the value of systems and processes over and over again. And so we take a lot of that same type of knowledge and structure into the campaign world.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. And how do you deal with somebody that might have a skeleton in their closet? Obviously, it's better to identify what those might be in the very beginning, so that when their opponent finally finds out or attacks them on it, you can dispel it or get past it.
Right. So, the thing about skeletons is everybody's got them. Everybody, no matter who you are, how perfect your past is, if you're not Jesus, then you've got something you'd rather not somebody find out about you. And for sure, rather not put on the front page of BuzzFeed or your local paper. So that's something to get out of the way right away. Everybody's got that stuff you prefer not be brought up or attacked on. So I don't care if Mother Teresa, there's still some thought she had at some point that I'm sure was, we'd rather not have known about her. So, in this case, what we do first is a vulnerability assessment. And this is one of those things where it takes you being very introspective and oftentimes deputizing somebody, either somebody that's close to you or hiring somebody outside to do a true vulnerability assessment. And this goes everywhere from looking and saying, hey, were you late in your taxes one time? To looking at, how much do you donate to charity? Looking at your past background, any lawsuits you filed or filed against you, businesses, those kind of things. So there's a lot of potential areas where you could be attacked. For instance, if you're running on the idea of fiscal responsibility and doing these things, then if you could be attacked for not paying your taxes on time. So it's like, okay, well, you're going to talk about fiscal responsibility, how we need good government, but yet you relate on your taxes this one time. And it could be a very innocuous reason. Someone got lost in the mail, your accountant screwed up, but you first got to know about it. And so the first step is to do a vulnerability assessment and catalog what those threat vectors are. Because if you don't know where the threat could come from, then you're not going to be able to head it off at the pass. So once we get that, we want to then analyze how to best handle those if they come up or when they come up. So some of the steps involved in that are to say, okay, how big is the threat? Is it significant? If it is, do we need to make a controlled detonation on this and put it out right now, or at some point during the campaign, should we be in charge of when this thing goes off, or should we just prepare and hope that it doesn't? Because there are some things that'll fall in each category. For instance, George W. Bush, when he was running for president in 2000, when it came out that he had a DWI back in the day, that came out in October of 2000, and it nearly derailed his entire campaign because he had built a reputation, he built a lot of trust, and all of a sudden you have it come out that he's been hiding this, and it was very, very detrimental to his campaign. And both he and Karl Rove, his campaign manager, have talked about how they should have made the controlled detonation on that. They should have been in charge and probably even put that out there as part of President Bush's story for what had helped change his life, because that was a transformative experience for him. So some things you want to put out there in front, you want to get out in front of and control that, when that thing goes off. Others you just want to prepare for. So something that that your audience is very familiar with was the idea of having a response plan. And I've had these in different businesses, and when I worked in the Senator Cruz's Senate office, we literally have that binder that everything from an earthquake to an active shooter, there's a plan. And so if something happens, you don't want to have to worry about in that fog of battle or fog of chaos trying to come up with a really good plan. You just want to be in a reactive mode. You want to be able to work the plan. And so in one of those situations, we literally open up to the tab that says active shooter, and we know what to do. We wouldn't have to be making decisions as we're under fire. And so you do the same thing when it comes to preparing for an attack on the campaign trail. You figure out that here's a threat vector. This is what I should do if it happens like this, and you put that on the shelf. You're ready for it. If it happens, you just pull it off and activate. And those are steps that take time, right? They take mental energy. They take a little bit of writing down. And so depending on how big the threat is, you may spend a little or a lot of time preparing. But either way, if you don't go through, know what the threat is, have a general idea for how you should deal with it, then you're going to get sideswiped, and you're not going to be ready to handle it in a positive way that's going to end well for you.
Yeah. So, hey, I want to talk to you about self-promotion. In the military, self-promotion is somewhat frowned upon. I mean, leadership is stressed in the military probably more than any other organization, but self-promotion is definitely frowned upon. If your fire team, your platoon, your unit, it's about the team, the unit. It's not about one person trying to jump out and get attention to themselves or brag about how much better they are than everybody else. Even though the fitness report, performance reports, pro cons and all that are all about individual performance, the individual cannot promote themselves in front of their other team members, other members of their unit. So self-promotion is something that's very foreign and very uncomfortable to most veterans. Have you ever noticed in dealing with veterans that want to run for office that they struggle a little bit with self-promotion? I
have. But this is one of these counterintuitive areas where that reticence to be a self-promoting dick actually really helps you. So when it comes to the type people that I work with in general, that's a common thing, even outside of veterans. So this is a problem that we deal with a lot. And what I would tell you is, look, this is not about you. And the fact that you're not interested in just promoting yourself, that it's not just about you and your name, that's huge. Because that tells me from the get-go that you have the right attitude. So that makes you all the more somebody that I want to help get elected, because it's not about you. And the fact is, if you're running for office because it's about you, then I'm not going to help you, because I'm going to figure that out pretty fast. You're not the kind of person that I want involved, that I want to be putting my name behind. So what I would tell you is this. It's not about you. It's about the issues. It's about the policies that you want to promote and what you want to do with our state, city, country, et cetera. So you're running for a reason. Those whys we talked about, as you identify what those are and why you want to run, just getting a better pension or getting your name out there, getting a better job someday, or a lobby contract, that should not be anywhere on the list or in your mind. It should be things like, you know what? I'm really frustrated that I'm never going to own my house, because my state's property taxes mean that even if I paid this sucker off, that being behind or not having the cash flow to pay my high property taxes could take my home away from me. Or, you know what? I'm frustrated that we have ethically compromised leaders in Austin or in DC. And I believe it's time that we have people who stand up that are willing to fight for principle and step up, put their name on the line and fight. So these attributes, these assets you have in your character are huge because one, they're in much shorter supply than you would believe, than you would necessarily see. Well, unless you watch what's happening in DC, and then it's very obvious how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
But we need people who are willing to step up, that it's about more than themselves. And so when you're coming at from that perspective, that is a couple things from you. One, you're focused on the results, not just your name. Obviously, your name has to be out there because you can't win unless people know who you are. But beyond that, look at your team. This is a team effort. This is an area where you're stepping up. You're simply the guy who's going to cast the vote. You can't win unless you have a lot of people that have rallied around you. And in this case, it's really more about the idea. So they're rallying around what you want to do, this vision you're creating of what that office is going to look like once you're in it. So you're actually asking not for them to invest in you, but to invest in a set of ideas and ideals. And so as part of that, once you're fighting, it's not just about talking about how awesome you are. It's talking about how important these ideas are. And that's really where I think that a lot of people are going to have an advantage when you're coming from the veteran community, because that's true there in a large number of cases. So when you're promoting ideas and those kind of things, that's different. And it stands out, and it turns out people love it. And so you're going to be rewarded for that.
Wow, it's awesome. Great. That's a great way to put it. I mean, it's great to have that characteristic that I'm not comfortable with self-promotion, but there's no way of getting around divulging to your constituents who you really are. But
right.
Knowing that restrictiveness, if you're not about self-promotion, then those are the right people that should be running, because running for office is not about you, but people aren't going to vote for you unless they know who you are and what you stand for.
Right. But at the end of the day, it's very similar to the problem that a lot of folks have with asking for money for the campaign. Mm-hmm. So I actually worked with a combat veteran, got a West Point grad Army captain that I was running for Congress. He's running again this cycle. I think he's going to win. And I was working with him last cycle, and one of his biggest hangups was he was not willing to go and ask for money. And love it or hate it, you got to have at least some money to run for office. And he was willing to put in a significant amount of his savings and his family's savings to be able to fuel the campaign, but he wasn't willing to go and actually ask for dollars. And I was on the whole campaign. I was like, man, you've got to do this. And he was like, Raz, I don't like begging. I don't like asking for money. I've been, from the West Point to the military to run my own business. Like, I've never asked anybody for charity, any of that. I said, man, that's not what this is about. You're not asking them for money for you to go buy a new car or a new boat or a new lake house. You're asking for an investment in a mission. And if you really believe in it, and you know that you can't do it by yourself, then you've got to be willing to ask other people to help you. And so what you're asking people, you're recruiting people to assist you on a mission that you know you can't do by yourself. And the truth is, you can like anoint yourself for a suicide mission, but that doesn't get anything done. And I actually think it's another counterintuitive area. I think it's actually very selfish, and it's even more self-centered to try to be that martyr, because you know that you're going to get nothing accomplished. But in the end, if you're willing to do the hard work of building a coalition, of convincing other people to invest their time, their money, their reputation with you to help get this thing done, then you're making sure it's not about you. And so, it's going to help you actually build a larger group and have it be less about you. Because if you're anointing yourself as this martyr that's going to charge the bulwarks and this, try to go after the swamp in DC by yourself, then I can tell you right now, you're not getting anything accomplished. All you're going to do is make yourself a martyr. And that may be cathartic to you to say, you know what, I tried. But the reality is you didn't do everything you could because you weren't willing to do the hard work of building that coalition and getting other people convinced to head in the same direction. I mean, that's true servant leadership. And that's an absolute critical step.
That's exactly, I can see a typical veteran having that exact same problem. And that kind of links in with the issue of self-promotion. So they need somebody like you to explain to them how to get past that. And then that's not really what this is about. So that's awesome. Hey, Raz, so we're getting close to the end of our time. If we go to mycampaigncoach.com, what's somebody going to find that's looking to delve into politics? What are they going to see? What are they going to find? What can you do for them?
So my favorite thing in the world is to create free content, because as much as I need to feed my family and stuff, my first goal is I want to help impact the direction this country is going. We don't have enough good men and women who are principled individuals who want to step up and run for office. So I provide a lot of free content there. We have the free course that I mentioned to analyze whether you're prepared to run for office. We take an hour and walk you through each of those questions. I get a video segment on each of them explaining why they're important, how to answer them, and how to apply that knowledge in your campaign or in your
exploratory phase. And that course is called Should I Run for Office?
Yeah, it's right there. It's linked right there on the front page at mycampaigncoach.com. From there, we have the podcast. We just released episode 42 today. So we got over 42 hours of campaign advice from some of the top consultants and candidates in the country that we interview every week that I talk to. And so we got great free advice from them there in our blog and other stuff. But we also have a paid course called the Advanced Candidate Course. And what we're doing is we're actually giving that away to veterans. And for folks, if you're a veteran that's looking to run for office and is interested in finding out what your next steps are and how to actually get your thing going, then we want to talk with you and we want to help that. And we're giving that away to a lot of veterans.
Wow, that's awesome. So, and most of these courses are it's videos and slide presentations that they can purchase online and walk themselves through.
Yes, sir. So we have videos in each one. The Advanced Candidate Course, we're releasing the content over the next 2 months. We got 4 modules out. We're going to end up with 12 in the end. There's going to be over 15 hours of content. There's going to be slide decks. There's going to be audio. There's going to be a lot of downloadable tools, kind of cheat sheets that you can use as you're building out those systems, from templates for emails and for volunteer activity, all the way to help things that help you with your budget, and some really cool budget spreadsheets that we built out that you can plug your numbers into and see some awesome information as you're planning out your mission.
That's great. Well, Raz, usually at the end, I ask the business owner or the entrepreneur, if you had one bit of advice for that veteran out there or military spouse that's looking to get into entrepreneurship, which I view running for office as a service, and it's really somewhat of an entrepreneurial venture, raising money and all that, going against the competition. I usually ask what specific advice would you have for them as they're at the beginning of their journey? So I'll ask you the same thing on the context of, if you're talking to a veteran or military spouse out there that's looking to run for office, what immediately comes to mind? What besides going to your website and checking out those awesome courses, what specifically comes to mind, and what kind of advice would you have for them?
Well, I'll give you two. One focused more on entrepreneurship, and then one focused on the campaign side. I get experience in both, going back to being 10 or 12 years old. And I love them each. They're kind of my two twin passions. When it comes to run for office, whether you're looking to run now or not, we need more principled men and women that are involved in politics. So even if you're not the candidate, then we need you to help find people that want to run and help them in that effort. But if you're specifically looking to run and you've thought about this at some point or through this podcast, you're like, you know what, that might be a good idea, a good way for me to serve. Then I would say go talk to some of your friends and start to find out what they think is important, what they think about you, and whether they think whether it's going to kind of be that of course or really moment. And when you ask somebody, say, hey, I'm thinking about running for office, what's their reaction? Are they just look at you kind of weird and be like, really? I mean, you're running for this? Or do they look at you and they're like, man, that's awesome. Of course, this is your time. You're the right person. So I'd say, having some of those conversations and get that self-assessment of where you at from, as far as currently being viewed by those around you, because that's going to be really important, and they can give you some great feedback. Beyond that, go to our website. I give free consultations, and so you can go there and sign up for a free call. I'd love to get to talk with some of your listeners and see how we can help, because there's never a time too early to prepare. That's really key. On the entrepreneurship side, and this also ties in with campaigns, is build systems. You can never have enough time. That's your one resource it's finite, but it's not renewable. Dollars, funding, volunteers, all those things are renewable resources that are finite, but time you can't get back. And so whatever you're doing, ask yourself, this is a Scott Beebe question that he asked me several times. So when he was coaching with me, he said, Raz, what are things that you can do that you won't have to do again? So from emails, that you're sending out all the time to different, it could be a proposal template or something like that. Spend the right amount of time focusing on doing it really, really good once, so you don't have to do it over and over again. I mean, I do this with my podcast, with invites. I do it with emails I send out. I have these templates that I spent a lot of time on, and then I have areas that I customize. So that when I go to send out a new podcast invite, I literally copy and paste, and I rewrite 2 sentences, and I send it out. And it's a personalized email that goes out that has a big impact. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge way that There's so many things that we do on a repetitive basis in business or in politics that we could save a lot of time and do it better by putting a system and a process in place.
Absolutely. Man, Raz, I'm all jacked up. I almost want to run for office here, but I don't know. I got a ways to go.
As soon as the mic gets turned off, we'll go right into a coaching session. How about that?
All right, sounds good. Well, hey, Raz, unfortunately, we're out of time. I look forward to your future success, and I definitely have a couple of veterans I know that are in the political process now and running for office. I'm actually going to hook you up via email and see if you guys can do some work together.
I really appreciate it, Joe. Thank you for having me on. Anybody that wants to connect with me can go through the mycampaigncoach.com website. I'm on Twitter as Raz Shafer, RazShafer, active all over the place, and would love to get in touch and see how I can help you guys.
All right, Raz, that's awesome. All right, we're Oscar Mike. As you can tell from listening to the Veteran on the Move podcast, interviews are a great way to tell your story and spread the word about your business. If you would like to get booked as a podcast guest, I recommend Interview Valet. You can check out Interview Valet at veteranonthemove.com/valet. Be sure to check out Thrive15.com, the world's premier online education platform that helps entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs learn how to start or grow a successful business. Start your free 30-day membership by going to Thrive15.com and use the promo code VETERAN. Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar Mike.